He's he's a piece of work, but
I have one great story to tell you.
I want to hear
This
it.
because this speaks to what we were talking
This
about
isn't the
earlier.
Fortenberry story, is it?
No, no.
No, because Coach Reed told me the Fortenberry story like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and I was like, I know the story. I was there, you know. So go ahead, tell me the story. I'm dying to hear it. So if for people who don't know, my roommate, I was paired, came in from Massachusetts, and I went on a visit with the young man named Elio Imbranoni from Weston, Mass, Westwood,
Westwood.
Mass, Westwood.
Westwood. Yeah.
And Elio was actually a great athlete, but he was when I say he was a comedian, he was always let down to have fun. He was he was just awesome. He's an awesome person, but it was a lot of fun. And Elio was my roommate for 4 years, and I've known Elio forever. And there's a lot that Elio-ish type things, but he was a lot of fun, and he was a great football player. And we have countless stories about him. So Pete's going to tell us a story
Well, here's one.
about my college roommate.
He was an absolute light. He really was. I mean, he was just.
And he hasn't passed. He's still with us. But.
Oh yeah, he still is an absolute light. So yeah, we talk about him like he's that much of a legend. But I can remember we used to Todd McShay, and Todd obviously NFL draft analyst with the Ringer, formerly of ESPN. Todd and I we were both hurt. I had a heart problem. Todd had a back problem. We couldn't play, and Coach Reed was going to make us earn our money. You know, I had a scholarship, and I think Todd was getting some kind of money. So Coach Reed was like, you guys are going to break down film, whatever the hell that looked like. I mean, so we were sitting in these very small rooms next to the coaches' offices. I mean, the rooms were it was like 15 square feet, me and McShay. We had these two like small ass TV monitors and this bank of like VHSs or whatever. I mean, that was a rough time. I remember Coach Reed. I was like, Coach Reed, you know, I was smoking a lot of pot in college. I was out of my mind, drinking all the time. And I remember Coach Reed was like, where's the Furman film? And I was like, yeah, I don't know. He's
by the way, not a good answer. Not a good answer.
I don't want to hear about it. Find it, you know? And I'm like, oh, I got to come up with this. I might have to drive to Furman, you know?
Right.
But so it was that kind of stuff. We were under a little hostility too, but we could hear the coaches and some of the lower level coaches, maybe not on full salary yet, had the small offices by us. Coach Frank Leonard, who just retired after a decorated football coaching career, finished up at Penn State. Coach Leonard's office was right by us. And Elio had not been going to class at all. And the running backs, you know, Coach Leonard, Elio had to check in with him as far as his classes were concerned. And, you know, Elio wasn't going to class, hardly at all, military science especially. So he has to go sit down in front of Coach Leonard, and Todd and I can hear this conversation. And Coach Leonard is like, well, I've got to call you military science professor, you know? And this is a military guy. I mean,
by the way, the impressions are very good. Very good.
I got to call the military science teacher. What's his name? And Elio's like, Private Fortenberry. Now, everybody knows a private is like the lowest level you can get in the military. Course, yeah. Right? So, but Coach Leonard's not thinking. He's moving 1,000,000 miles an hour. So he calls this guy up. He's like General or Captain Fortenberry. I forget which one is his real name. But you hear Coach Leonard call this military guy up to discuss Elio's insufficient attendance and grades. Yes, Private Fortenberry. And you could tell on the other end that this guy Fortenberry is like, it's Captain Fortenberry. Coach.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, Captain Fortenberry, no disrespect, sir. No disrespect.
That's right.
And then you got Elio sitting across from him. Like he knows that the SHIT storm is coming, but it was worth the joke. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, that was like every day for us. There was stuff like that. You know?
Every day. I mean, every day there was something, some sort of prank. Like, I think that you form incredible bonds with people that go through hardship, and, you know, there's a lot of comedy. Ironically, like, you get a bunch of really hardworking, aggressive, tough human beings who are just awesome human beings, but there's a lot of comedy that gets you through those days. A lot of comedy, you know, and that's very helpful. As you said, it's light, but it's very helpful. It's really very helpful.
And there's one other story I wanted to tell you.
Yeah, please.
That speaks to like the team bonding and, you know, how it can be so dark. your perception at the time. I was taught last year I had a game at BYU, and it was before Mark Pope got the job at Kentucky. So he's the head coach at BYU. It was actually at Kansas State, and we're talking to him before the game. And Mark Pope is a super cool guy, but he's not one to give you a ton before. He's just not that type of coach, right? He won't tell you a ton about what's going on with his team. He kind of wants to talk to the media and move on, even the national guys, right, which is who we are for these games. So, but it was right after Pitino had called out his players at St. John's, because Mark Pope played for Pitino at Kentucky. So Rick Pitino, obviously now the head coach of St. John's, was calling out his guys from St. John's, like, we're not athletic, we're not doing this, This is 2 years ago. And we were kind of, at this point, we're off the record, and I just asked Pope, I was like, what was it like playing for Pitino? And he, like, looks around and made sure, like, nobody was, like, around. He goes, let me tell you something. He goes, it was the worst 365 days a year, like 24 hours a day. You were looking over your shoulder, waiting for the other shoe to drop. He's like, it was like the worst, hardest thing. And he's like, but I talked to some of my old teammates, like guys that you're in that quote unquote foxhole with. He's like,
Yeah.
And all we do is talk about how amazing it was.
Yeah.
And all we do is talk about how, like, it made us ready for the world that we're a part of today. Like, nothing is as hard as that was. Mm-hmm. And, you don't reap the rewards quite as great as that was. So your muscle memory is kind of tied to that too. That exhaustion and that absolutely that annihilation that is being a member of a team like that, what that does for you as a person.
Yeah, for sure.
And the magic that brings. And I thought that was I was like, wow, it was the first time he'd really kind of opened up, and you could tell it was something he would have wanted to talk about for days.
Yeah. I mean, we've heard countless stories about people who have gone through hellish type programs and they just come out the other side and they're just phenomenal people. But you can think, without naming names, you could think out personalities, that how they started, how they finished, and where they are in life today. Like, I'm thinking about Joe Douglas was a GM in the NFL.
Yeah.
Pete Sousa works for ESPN, crushes it. Todd McShay is huge in the industry. You have Andrew Bogle's a surgeon, right? I could go on and on. There's like a lot of people. Mania Moore, NFL Players Association at the top. DeJuan Jones scouting, Sean Gustus scouting, and they're not like scouts. They're like high level people who kind of run the NFL. Like, these guys are. Do you think that happens if they don't go through all that hardship, and then when they get in a room and they have job opportunities and there's 15 scouts, they rise to the top? Why do you think they rise to the top?
Well, I think it's exactly because of what we're talking about. And I think now this is one thing that we can say to young people who are paying attention. The opportunity now is greater than ever for people to kind of sink their teeth into something and stand out, because I think there's so many people who are just not necessarily focused on being average, but being an average person is something that's on the table and is just A-okay.